Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. It's internationalvin.com. Last week, I had the fortunate experience to travel to St. Louis, Missouri to celebrate our family's 50th reunion in America. Actually, the location was St. Charles or Marthasville, Missouri, about 45 minutes or an hour to the west of St. Louis. So the story goes, Dan and Sallie Shipley in 1975 agreed to sponsor my parents from Vietnam. So at the end of the Vietnam War in April 1975, my parents and siblings were rerouted in Wake Island, then the Philippines, and then ultimately to Arkansas, where they were processed for a couple of months before Dan and Sallie Shipley agreed to take them in and to sponsor them. So by, I believe, August 1st of 1975, they landed in St. Charles or Marthasville, Missouri. These are small farming communities, and they made their lives there for the next 6 months. And, it was kind of an interesting time. There were a lot of cultural differences. My parents didn't speak English. They didn't have any money with them. They just came with the clothes on their backs. And the Shipleys, of course, were a young, growing family. They were married for a few years. They had a few kids, and they were living in this rural area on this farm. So we pretty much arrived in America. So two different, totally different cultures, different types of family and people, and we were able to live and survive with the Shipleys. And then I was born later in October of that year. And so after 6 months, my parents decided to move to southern Minnesota, to Mankato, where my formative years were. So I went through all of the Catholic grade school, middle and high school education system, as well as to St. John's University, which is a Catholic college in Minnesota. And by 1998, around 2000, I left the state, and my parents actually moved permanently to Fort Myers, Florida at that point in time. So we no longer lived in Minnesota, but we established ourselves in Florida. But by that time, the kids had dispersed, and my brother was living in Dallas. I traveled the world and traveled to Asia and things like that, and occasionally would come back to Fort Myers. So that's what happened during that time, and we were very, very fortunate to befriend the Shipleys. They were very, very generous with their time and money, and they helped us get ingrained to U.S. culture. My parents started to learn English. My dad's first job was washing dishes and things like that. So it was a very simple times, but very trying times for both my parents, our family, and the Shipleys. And we're very, very fortunate to have them in our lives. The Shipleys later established Gateway Medical Research, built it from nothing to over a 500-person, 10-clinic, massive laboratory in the suburbs of St. Louis. And so they sold that in around 2012, and they retired off that. But I learned at our 50th anniversary reunion that they remain humble people as ever. They're the same farming. They're the same farming family. They live at the same home. The home is about 90% the same. They have more acreage, more land that they've purchased over the years, but down to it, they're just really simple, nice, and generous people as you could be. Very, very humble. And so that was the big takeaway that I learned from last weekend by celebrating with them, by revisiting with their family, their siblings, and their growing grandkids. They ultimately have 8 kids and 27 grandkids. And so a lot of people and a lot of help that went into raising us kids while they were supporting us. So very, very fortunate. In 50 years, seems like an eternity, but at the same time, it was like a blink of an eye. Time goes by so fast. Who could believe that 50 years later we would be celebrating our 50th anniversary in America? So a great time, not only for my family to reconnect and spend time with each other, but as well as with the Shipleys. And that was our trip last week. All right, just a quick recap, and I'll see you on the next video.